We're live. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry for the technical delays. We're going to try this from the top. Jackie, kick us off. Welcome back, everyone. Sorry for the technical delays. We're going to try this from the top.
Okay. Hold it for one.
Jackie,
Yes. Okay. I'm trying. Okay.
sorry for the technical delays.
Unfiltered hours fully.
Did I kick us off Facebook? No, we're live. Okay. You know what I did? I cut off my anyway. Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Political Conversations, Politics, and the City Budget. Next slide. How do you get your information about politics, Theresa?
Well, that's a great question. I get my information about politics from a lot of different sources. I read the paper a lot. I get the paper at my house. I read online. I see things that people post on social media. I get news summaries. I go to people's websites to do research on candidates. So lots of different ways. What about you, Miss Jackie? How do you get your information about politics?
Well, I get it most of the ways that you do, but then I have a couple friends that are in politics, so I get to talk to them directly, and we get to discuss what's going on in Frankfurt, what's going on in Metro Council, and what's going on at the federal level as well. So I get it from all the different places. Okay, next slide. Tonight, we're going to talk about the elected officials that represent Russell. And the first one we're going to start off with is Diane Porter. She's a Jefferson County Public Schools School Board representative for District 1. Why is this important? School board members serve as representatives and advocates for their community, prioritizing the needs and interests of students and the public school system. Through school board members' responsibilities ties to governance, policies, budget, and more. The school board can cultivate a culture of support and success within the community. Ms. Porter, we had her on our political conversations, I think about a month or two ago, and she was very informative. People called in and they were asking her questions about the kids returning to school during this pandemic, how they were going to be, what was the school board's plans about keeping their children safe on the bus. And she answered the questions, and she also took the concerns that the parents had back to the school board members, the other school board members. So, and then they looked at what she was bringing to them, and they were able to resolve the parents' concerns. So that's why we need someone like Diane Porter as our District 1 school board representative. Next slide. How is local government organized? The executive branch, led by the mayor, includes all agencies and departments of local government. The legislative branch, led by Metro Council. Next slide. What is the Louisville Metro Council? It's established in 2003 when the city of Louisville merged with Jefferson County. It replaced the City of Louisville Board of Aldermen and the Jefferson County Fiscal Court. Located in City Hall, council members serve a 4-year term with no term limits, because we've had some people that's on the Metro Council that served on the Board of Aldermen. So I think some have been on there since 2003. There are 26 Metro Council members representing Jefferson County. At this time, the council includes 7 Republicans and 19 Democrats. Trivia time. Theresa, how many small incorporated cities are there in Jefferson County?
Ooh, that's a tricky question because I know there are a lot of them, but I can never remember exactly how many. So I'm going to guess that it's 84.
correct. Okay.
Oh, I'm actually surprised I got that right.
Yeah. Okay, now here's another question. Do the
Okay.
regional council members represent the people that live in the small incorporated cities?
I'm going to say the answer to that one is yes.
Oh, you're good.
Ooh.
Okay, you're correct. Okay. Even though the small incorporated cities, they have their own mayor, but they're still represented by their metro council members. Next slide, please. What does the metro council do? It adopts ordinance and resolution using a three-step process. First reading, an announcement that the council will consider an ordinance. Committee review, public testimony happens here, and that's when you go before the Metro Council and you talk in favor of it or against it, and you have 3 minutes to express your concerns or support. The second reading, additional council discuss and debate leading up to a final approval or reject the council or resolution. Metro Council members overrides a mayor's veto with a 2/3 majority vote, approves a budget and adopts a budget ordinance. And Theresa, doesn't the budget have to be approved by July 1?
It does. The city
Okay.
operates on a weird fiscal year that runs from July 1st to June 30th. So the budget
Okay.
has to be approved before the end of it.
Okay. Um, Establish committees on various variety of topics, including government audit, planning, zoning, budget, public safety, contracts, economic development. Committees conduct business, delegate to them by state law, zoning changes, local ordinance, landmarks designation, are to oversee various functions related to the budget, union contracts, and it also approves tax levies. Next slide, please. Who represents Russell? We have Councilman Ja'Cory Arthur. He is the youngest person to be elected to Metro Council. He represents the largest part of Russell. Then we have Councilwoman Donna Purvis. District includes parts of Shawnee, Portland, and the western part of Russell. We have Councilman David James. He represents a small area of Russell. He is also the president of Metro Council. Next slide. Metro Council district boundaries, and that includes Russell. And Russell goes from 9th Street to 32nd, from Market to Broadway. Next slide. When are Metro Council elections? Even numbered districts are elected in even years. Odd numbers districts are elected in odd years. So this year, it's going to be an odd year at election time. You've got 1, 3, 7, 9, so forth. Okay. Ja'Cory Arthur's term is 2021 through 2024. Donna Purvis, her term is from 2020 to 2023. David James's term is from 2021 to 2024. Primaries are in May and general elections in November. How do you engage with your Metro Council member? You can sign up for their newsletter. You can sign up to speak at the council meeting. You can call them or email them or their legislative aid assistants. Engage them on social media. Meet them in the community, or participate in our Pop's political conversation series. Next slide, please. What does the mayor do? The mayor is elected up to 3 consecutive 4-year terms, submits a budget proposal to Metro Council, implements the budget, enforces the ordinance adopted by the Metro Council, oversees contracts that are approved by the Metro Council, He manages the staff. He vetoes or approves ordinance and resolutions, appoints a deputy mayor, appoints boards and commissions with confirmation by the Metro Council. Mayor Greg Fisher was first elected in 2011. He is currently finishing his third term, which ends in 2022. Next slide. The budget, and we want to thank Commonwealth Kentucky. This is their budget, and we sort of like borrowed so we can share it with you all. Um, Let me
Maybe
see.
we can drop a link in the Facebook chat
Yes,
about
we can
this.
do that.
Kentucky for the
Yes,
Commonwealth does this awesome People's Guide to the Budget, and these are some beautiful graphics from that document.
yes. And you want me to drop the link in there, right?
No, but I think maybe Cassandra can drop a link in
It's
the
fun
Facebook
time
chat,
tonight, okay?
right? We're
Next
making it work.
slide. Okay, the budget process. The budget process never ends. What's new? Metro Council enacted a new ordinance that requires each agency or department to demonstrate that its proposed budget advances racial equity. And again, we're going to drop the link in the chat so that you can see this for yourself. As it says, the budget process never ends. Next slide. And that's you, Theresa.
I think I'm taking over.
Yes.
So the rest of this presentation is going to be about the state and federal elected officials and the organization of state and federal government. And you're going to see that it looks super similar. So how is the state government organized? The state government is broken up into 3 separate branches: the executive branch, and that is housed under the Kentucky governor. And the executive branch implements laws through agencies and departments. They propose a budget and then they veto laws, and they also enforce the laws. The legislative branch is part of the Kentucky the General Assembly is part of the legislative branch. Wow, I'm talking really well right now. The General Assembly makes the laws, they pass a budget, they override vetoes, which we saw a lot of in this session. They enact taxes, and they also convene committees. And then the judicial branch of our state government is made up of the courts, and the courts interpret the laws. So lots of different functions, lots of different duties. And interestingly, or maybe not, all 3 of these branches of government are located in this building in the middle at the Kentucky Capitol.
Theresa,
So
when you say the legislative branch, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the House of Representatives, Senate?
Yeah, the Kentucky State Senate and the Kentucky House of Representatives. And sometimes we call those 2 things together the Kentucky General Assembly. And so these fine folks that you see on the screen right now are members of the Kentucky General Assembly who represent Russell. So we have on this page Representative Attica Scott. She represents District 41, and she was first elected to office in 2017. And she had a bunch of bills that she proposed in this year's session. She was also on our political conversations a little while, I think maybe 2 months ago.
Yes.
And we're really excited about that. And we're also excited to have her back. Then to her left, we have Representative Pamela Stevenson. She represents District 43, and she was actually just elected in 2021. So she's had some good stuff happen at the Capitol as well. And I think we're going to try to get her on for one of our political conversations in the future. So Representative Stevenson, if you're watching or hear about this, you might be getting a call from us. This gentleman up here in the corner is Senator Gerald Neal, and he represents in the Kentucky State Senate District 33. And there are only 38 Senate districts in Kentucky, so he is one of a few. He was first elected in 1989. So he has been doing this job for quite some time. I think we're also going to be trying to get him on board for one of our political conversations. So Senator Neal, you might also be getting a phone call from us. And then down in the corner, we have an honorable mention, and this is Representative Reginald Meeks. The reason he's on this slide, even though he doesn't represent Russell, is that he partners with the three folks who do represent Russell on a fairly regular basis. And so we wanted to throw him in for good measure. On the next slide, we have the Kentucky House of Representatives district boundaries. And so just a little side note, we only have 2 colors, but we have 3 folks that represent Russell that we just talked about. And the reason there's only 2 colors is that Senator Neal actually represents all of Russell, so we didn't need to make a distinction between where his district boundary ends. But for the two folks who are shown here, the red color represents Pamela Stevenson's district, and the kind of like taupey, kind of tanny, I don't know what we call that color, eggshell, I don't know, represents Attica Scott's district. So you can see that there's a little bit of a jog around in the district boundaries. So how do you engage with state elected officials? There's lots of different ways. You can email them, and it's super convenient because all of their email addresses are pretty much the same. It's their first name, a period, and then their last name at lrc.ky.gov. Kentucky also makes it super easy for people who prefer to pick up the phone. You can actually call this 1-800 number right here, and you'll be connected to some really lovely, super helpful people who staff the Capitol switchboard. And you can just leave a message with them. You tell them who you want to leave the message for and what the message is, and they will literally write that down and send it on to the person you're trying to contact. You can also sign up. A lot of our elected officials have newsletters or emails that they send out on a regular basis, and so you can sign up for those so that you get their updates. In this day and age, there's also a ton of activity on social media. So you can follow people, you can interact with people, you can ask questions, and people will actually respond back to you on social media. Sometimes, if you're in the right place at the right time, you can actually run into these elected officials in the community. They spend a lot of time in Frankfurt, but they do get out and about fairly regularly. And so if you run into them in the community, you should always feel free to walk up and to introduce yourself, let them know that you're a constituent, and express what's on your mind. Another great way, and another shameless plug, is that you can participate in Russell A Place of Promise's political conversation series. We would love to have you. And we'll be inviting the folks that we talked about inviting to future events. And then the last way that you can engage with state elected officials, and this one's a little bit of a bigger time commitment, is that you can attend an advocacy day at the Kentucky Capitol. And a lot of community organizations organize these. The Metro United Way is famous for its Live United Day, but there are definitely other organizations that organize advocacy days where they bring a bunch of people to the Capitol and they talk about issues of concern to the community. So
Theresa, I hate to interrupt you.
No, do it. I love questions.
Okay, we had a question from Facebook. They want to know, what does the mayor do? Could you go back to that slide right quick?
Yes. Totally. What does the mayor do?
What does the mayor do? He is elected up to 3 consecutive four-year terms. He submits a budget proposal to the Metro Council. He implements the budget. He enforces the ordinance adopted by Metro Council. He oversees the contracts that are approved by the Metro Council. He manages the staff. He vetoes or approves ordinance and resolutions. He appoints a deputy mayor. He appoints board and commissions with confirmation by Metro Council. Mayor Greg Fisher was elected in 2011. He is currently finishing his 3rd term, which ends in 2022.
So is it safe to say that if you as a citizen are interacting with a staff member of Louisville Metro government, that you are interacting with someone who eventually reports up to the mayor?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So the code enforcement officers, the economic development team, the folks at the health department, they all fall under this like structure of the mayor's office, right?
Of course. And then if you apply for a board or a commission, again, the mayor has to send your name over to Metro Council. They approve it. and you're on the board and commission. And speaking of board and commissions, we really need more people from Russell to apply for the boards and commissions.
Yeah, there are a lot of boards and commissions to choose from, and a lot of them have really significant impact on people in Russell and across the West End. And I know we've done some social media posting on that in the past, but also if people are interested in learning more about that, they could probably get in touch with us, right?
Yes, they really can. And what we will go this ooh, we will even go to this extent. We will help them fill out the application because sometimes that can be a little bit overwhelming. And also, we have one or two residents that are on the board and commissions, and we can connect them to that the person is serving on the board or commission, and they can explain their experiences to them. Yeah,
That's
it's
great.
not as
I
it's
would
not as scary as one might think.
Yeah, I would say too that if somebody was interested in learning more, we could also help them get in touch with the staff member who works with that board or commission so that they could
Yes,
get more information that way too.
yes, we could. Yeah, okay.
So email us, let us know. Should we
Okay.
keep going? Are there more questions from the Facebook that we should answer?
Not right now.
Okay, let's keep going then. I want to hang out on this page for a second too before we get back to the federal government.
Okay.
So when that question about the mayor came up and I was talking about like all the different staff members who report up to the mayor, and that's part of what he does,
Mm-hmm.
this amazing chart that Kentuckians for the Commonwealth put together lists all of those different agencies and all of those different related agencies that get money from the budget. And all of this stuff right here, not the Office of Internal Audit and not the Louisville Metro Council, because they're different, but all of these other folks are part of the mayor's staff. So the organization of Louisville Metro government on the executive side is humongous. And that was just a little thing
It
that I wanted to
is.
point out. All right, jumping through. All right. The federal government. This is going to look so much like the state government that you're going to see a lot of similarities. So, how is the federal government organized? Pretty much exactly the way the state government is organized. So, there's an executive branch, it's led by the president. They implement the laws, again, through agencies and departments. They propose a budget, they veto laws, they do a bunch of things to make things work or not work, depending on your perspective. The legislative branch, represented by this lovely picture of the Capitol in the middle, is Congress. So Congress makes the laws. They pass a budget, they override vetoes that come from the president's office, and they convene committees. And y'all have probably seen committees on everything from domestic terrorism to the budget to just all kinds of things, the environment. Congress has a lot of meetings. And then the judicial branch of government, and this is the federal court, and this is a picture of the US Supreme Court's building. And just like at the state level, the federal courts interpret the laws. Who represents Russell? So we have a collection of men on this page who represent Russell. At the US House of Representatives, our local representative is John Yarmouth. And if we're thinking about districting, congressional district or 30 is his district for the US House of Representatives. And Congressman Yarmouth was elected in 2013. And then we have our senators. So we have Mitch McConnell. He is with, again, the US Senate. He is a senator. He was first elected in 1985. So he has been doing this job for a very, very long time. And then we have his counterpart, Junior Senator Rand Paul. He was elected in 2011. So he's been around for a while, but not nearly as long as his counterpart, Senator McConnell. And so I don't have a map for these guys because their district, the two senators represent all of Kentucky, so there's no
Mhm.
need to break up who represents Russell. And then Congressman Yarmouth represents most of, but not quite all of Jefferson County. There's a little part that's represented by another congressperson, but it's way out in the East End, and all of Russell is represented by Congressman Yarmouth. So, how do you engage with our federal elected officials? They seem like they're really far away. They spend a lot of time in Washington, D.C. We don't see them in the community as often as we see some of our other state and local elected officials, but they are out there. Um, so there's ways to get in touch. You can send them a note. All three of these folks have websites through the federal government. And I've got their websites listed here: mcconnell.senate.gov, paul.senate.gov, yarmouth.house.gov. And on each of those websites, there's a little comment form where you can put your name and your email address and your phone number in and send them a note to express a position or to ask a question or to just get in touch. They also have newsletters that you can subscribe to. And so you can sign up again through those web pages. Just like in Frankfurt, at the Capitol in Washington, D.C., there's also a switchboard. It's a little less convenient. When you call the Capitol switchboard at this number on the slide, this 202 number on the slide, instead of the folks taking a message from you, what they'd really like to do is to know who you're trying to get in touch with. And then they will route you to that person's office where you can leave a message with one of the staff members, or sometimes just on a voicemail. And sometimes that voicemail is full because they're getting a lot of comments and you might have to call back a couple of times to get your message through, but it is an option. And then likewise, each of them have numbers at their local offices, and you can see that those numbers are listed right here on the screen. And you can call their local offices and again, sometimes get in touch with their field representative. You can sometimes leave a voicemail if their voicemail box isn't full. You might have to call back a few times to get your message through, but that is an available option. All of them also have social media that you can use to engage with them. And so again, you can ask questions, you can leave comments, you can engage in conversation at various levels on their social media. And then sometimes you can see them in community. And so if you do see one of these elected officials, these Congress people, these senators, you can absolutely go up and have a conversation with them. They do represent you. It might feel weird to go up to somebody that seems like they're so far away because they spend a lot of time in DC, but they do want to have conversations. They do want to engage with their constituents, at least on some level. And so you can come up and talk to them. And so that's an option for them. So I think we've covered our bases as far as the information that we wanted to share. Do we have any more questions in the chat that we can answer?
Well, Donovan Taylor, he says the Chickasaw Neighborhood Federation, you can go on their Facebook page to view a recorded virtual form of how to join a Metro board and commission, our commission.
Awesome. That's got to be a great resource.
It's a Chickasaw Neighborhood Federation on their Facebook page.
Thanks for sharing that, Donovan.
But Theresa, have you ever written a letter to one of the federal elected people that represent you or anything like that?
I sure have. I've emailed, I've written letters, I've gotten responses.
They do respond to you?
They do respond, and sometimes it's not them directly, but it's a member of their staff who'll email you back. And sometimes they get a lot of emails on particular topics. And so they may send you something back that looks like a form letter. But in a lot of cases, they will write you something back that's really responsive to the question that you asked or the concern that you raised.
Okay. What about the state? Okay. I love politics, and like I said, I have several friends that are in politics. And what I do volunteer to go canvassing with them in the community. In fact, I have been all the way to Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, to canvass for candidate down there. But it's a great way to meet people. It's a great way to get people that interested in politics, because when your neighbor knows that you're involved in politics, you get to have discussions about that, and then they not only understand what's going on, but you get an opportunity to understand where they're coming from and what their concerns are, and you can arrange for them to meet their elected representatives, because like you say, they are in the community and they do want to hear from their constituents.
Miss Jackie, you have been involved in politics for a while, and I'm not going to say how many years because it's not relevant, but you have a lot of experience. And for folks who are listening who might be curious or might be thinking that they'd like to engage either in a campaign or with one of their elected officials to ask a question or to raise a concern, what would you give them as advice for the first step? How do you get started in this?
Okay, if they want to get involved in candidate's campaign, all they have to do is call that person that's running for office, their campaign headquarters, and say, hey, I would like to volunteer. And they say, well, how would you like to volunteer? You say, well, I don't want to go out canvassing, but I can call people, or I can help send out mailers. Okay, for somebody that's interested in running for office, and that's what I encourage people to do, because we need people to run for office, especially people of color. Okay, um,
Totally.
I would just say, just talk to your elected representative or somebody that's already in office and say, what do I need to do to prepare myself to run for office? And just have those type of conversations, and then work on their campaign. And you see how, because when you decide to run for office, it's more than just going around talking to people. You have to raise money, and
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the hardest things. And if you're not comfortable with telling people how to raise money, it's sort of hard. If you're not comfortable, you have to, it's practice and practice. And if you are not used to just walking up to people and start talking to people, you have to practice doing that as well.
Yeah, that can be really intimidating, especially if you're approaching somebody who's already in that position
Hmm.
to say, hey, I'm your constituent. Here's what I think, or I have a question. It could be really intimidating.
Okay, but you know what? Sometimes what I have heard in the past, people say, I don't care about politics because my vote really doesn't matter. What would you say to them?
Whoa. Okay. So I think the past several years of elections, and like this is like me reading the news, me reading the articles,
Mhm.
there have been so many close calls in elections. Like you look at the Georgia elections, the senatorial elections,
Yes.
and those elections went to runoffs where we had to redo the election because they were so close. And it was just a matter of a few hundred or a few thousand votes that would have put that election in a totally different category, would add totally different people. And so, what I would say to people is that every vote counts, and that if you care about your community and you care about the things that are happening in your world, one of the best things that you can do to express your concern and express your perspective is to go vote.
I agree with you. And I always tell people that your vote is your voice. And
Yes.
it's your voice to express what's going on in the community. You have a right to express yourself. If you want this person in, you vote for this person. If you want this law passed, you talk with that elected official about that. But your vote is your voice. And I think we all should use our voices. Another
Yeah.
question, Theresa. How
Yes.
do government policies and practice impact the ability for Black families and communities to build wealth?
Ooh, so let me talk about that.
Okay.
I want to like, let me preface my comments. So
Okay.
my job before coming to work with Russell A Place of Promise was to write policies
Mm-hmm.
and to build programs that affected people across the
Hmm.
community. And that work is super important work. And it's super important for people who aren't in government and who aren't in positions to write those kinds of things to get engaged in those conversations, because government, local government, but also state and federal government can use policies and use programs to influence outcomes for people. So when we think about Black families and Black community building wealth, the conditions that we see today that have prevented Black families and prevented Black communities from building and keeping wealth have all come from government policies, government programs, government practices have excluded on purpose Black families and communities from these opportunities. And so when we think about how government practices and policies can impact in a positive way those outcomes for families, we need voices from the community to show up and participate in conversations about what they need, what they're hoping for, what their goals are, how they see those policies and practices influencing opportunity. And so, you know, as we think about like what are the systems in place today and how are those systems influenced by what happened in the past with redlining, with urban renewal, with the Federal Highways Act, with the GI Bill that didn't create the same opportunity for everybody who was eligible for those programs. Um, we need to look really intentionally at how to change those outcomes by using our policies, using our programs, using our practices. And government can't do it as effectively without people from the community being engaged and being, you know, willing to participate in conversations that can create the kind of change that will lead to opportunities for everybody. I'm going to ask you that same question, though. How do you see government policies and practices impacting the ability of Black families and communities to build wealth? Or maybe I can ask you, how do you see, especially in Russell, um, opportunities for Black families to show up and contribute to policy conversations?
I think, you know, for them to show up, I think the question is, how do we know if a candidate or an elected official are are willing to implement policies that will have a positive impact on my not only my family but my community and other black community, other black families. So how, and I think that's the question, how do we tell? Because people say just go to the community, go to the community meetings and talk to the, this person, this elected official and stuff like that, but how do we cast our vote, use our voice to select someone that will implement right and implement policy that have a positive impact on the families, and that's really difficult. So how
Yeah,
do
it
we,
can be.
yeah, so how do we do that? And
Mhm.
I think it's more than not only having a conversation, but I think that the people, our elected officials, I take this, they're working for us. So we should interview them for that job, and we should
Mhm.
ask them about how would they address our concerns? How would they create policies? And let's just take the living wage, okay? Um,
Mhm.
we should ask them, do you believe in raising the minimum wage? And they say, well, blah, blah. Well, how would you do it? How would you convince your peers in the House or the Senate to raise to minimum wage? We should be asking those tough questions, not just listen to them as they come to, church on Sundays and do that politician wave, but we should be asking that tough questions.
Yeah,
And we should
I
be putting,
totally agree.
yes, we should be electing people that we know that will create policies and implement policies that will have a positive impact on our community. And if they get in office and they don't do what they said they were going to do,
Yeah.
then we should not rehire them the next term. I was in a conversation today with somebody about politics, and they said this person said that, well, we got this passed, and then we have to go back and then fine tune it.
Oh,
That's sort of dangerous. That's like writing a blank. Would you write, Teresa? Would you write somebody a blank check and hoping they would do the right thing?
no.
So when your elected official tells you something like that, you should question them and ask them, well, if you know that this is going to have a negative impact on the black community, our black community, our my family, why would you vote for it and then hope that they would change it later on down the road? And
Yeah.
we have to ask those difficult questions.
Right. And you're right that when you think about making policy and you think about passing laws, you really want to work out the details and know how things are going to affect people
Right.
before you pass the law, before you make the policy. And that's one of the reasons that the ordinance that we talked about with Metro Council
Hmm.
that requires city agencies to demonstrate how their budget proposals advance racial equity is so important. Because
Hmm.
a lot of times it's easy to come up with what you think is a great solution, but it can have really negative impacts on people down the road. And it can have really negative impacts from a racial equity perspective down the road if you don't think it through on the front end. And so, it is tricky to say, well, we passed a law, but now we got to figure out what it really means, how it really works, because unintended consequences are a real and dangerous thing. And so, having community voices helps you identify what those unintended consequences could be. And we got a good comment from Danita on the Facebook saying, great answer, Jackie. We should interview them. And yes, we should interview them.
And we should think of and I've always thought elected officials work for us, okay? And
Mm-hmm.
that we should interview them. And then if they get up there and do what the opposite they were going to say they were going to do, we should hold them accountable, not only during the time they're in office, but at election time too.
Yeah, and Danita chimed in and said also check to see what they've done for people in the past. And that's a big deal. People
Yes.
are right.
Yeah. I think that people see and say, okay, I'm going to run for office. And one of my questions is like Danita said, I always ask them, what have you done in the past for the community? What have you done in the past that have prepared you for this position? Example, last year, I live in Russell, so we had about 7 people running for the District 4 seat. I talked with
Wow.
all of them before I made my decision. I talked with each and every one of them. And I think not only as individuals we should do that, but I think the neighborhood associations, the church groups, are the
Mhm.
group of women that meet every Saturday to walk. They should
Yep.
interview the candidates because they are representing our community and what they do, whether it's on Metro Council, whether it's in Frankfurt, or whether it's in DC, it will have an impact on our lives, and we want to make it have a positive impact, not only on
Yeah.
but on our community as well.
Right. And Danita is on fire with her comments. She just had another one that's awesome that we don't need folks who just sit in these seats and don't do anything.
Here's a question, uh, Denise, if you can hear me. Uh, do you believe in term limits for our elected officials? And while she's typing in, Theresa, do you believe in term limits for our elected officials?
I think term limits are healthy. And you think about your own personal life and you're like, maybe you think about your job.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and most people don't stay in the same job for their whole career with no promotion, no change in what they do. I know I'm going to try to count real quick in my head. I've had at least five jobs,
Mm-hmm.
five jobs since I graduated from my graduate programs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually not that many. Um, so when you think about, our elected officials, they're doing a job in representing us.
Mm-hmm.
And so term limits recognize that, people can have an opportunity to influence and lead as elected officials, but that we need transition and we need new ideas and we need new
Mm-hmm.
voices. And if we have the same people sitting in the seats with no term limit, no recirculation of that opportunity, then
Mm-hmm.
we miss a chance to bring in other talented people and other voices to the table, who can continue the work that those folks have set in motion, and be responsive to things that are happening in the world today, maybe differently than somebody who's sat in that seat for a long, long time without a term limit. Looks like we got a little chime in from Alonzo saying term limits, yes.
I agree that there should be term limits. I do believe that at a certain point, that person can be no longer effective in that position. That we
Mhm.
need fresh ideas, and we need to, as older people in positions, we need to allow space for the younger folks to come in with the fresh ideas and the energy that
Yep.
it takes to, be in a position like that. And I think that if more young folks were in certain positions, that we would get a better response from the young people voting.
Yeah, and you got to think about like young people come up with some amazing ideas because they really like test things out and try things and really like experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder, like, what would our politics look like if we were more open to that, more open to like bringing young people in, giving them a chance to lead, and really like testing some stuff out. It looks like we got another comment from Danita.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there's a state teaching police officers how to intervene when they believe their fellow officers are about to kill someone they've confronted. Why then don't we start teaching Metro Council members, state legislators, and Congress people how to intervene when they see how a bill may be negative toward we, the people? What do you think about that?
Oh, okay. Sometimes, and that goes to term limits,
Hmm.
partially. Um, I don't think our elected officials in position to go along to get along if they know that um, the bill is going to have a negative impact on the people that they they're constant the people that they represent. I think that we should put people over party instead of party over people.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so
I'm
that's
with
it.
you. I'm 100% with you on that.
But again, I go back to saying this, that if we see that our people that represent us have a habit, are co-signing or sponsor bills that will have a negative impact on the people and the community they represent, there's always they always will come up for reelection. And instead of rehiring them, we should
Mhm.
fire them.
I think people kind of, I think maybe sometimes people get comfortable,
Yes.
with the idea that sometimes memories are, maybe not as long as they could be when it comes to that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And they just sort of assume that people will forget that things have been done that aren't helpful or that are really like hurtful to people. And I think that as people engage in politics and as people stay current with how things are going, that it's important to have conversations and ask questions of folks who are running for office to bring those ideas back up so that we don't forget, we don't lose sight of, and that we can pay attention to the track record so that when it's time to reelect, we can make a best decision.
I,
It
I,
looks like Danita chimed in on the term limits too. She's on fire tonight. She says term limits are needed to avoid clique groups or to avoid being paid to vote a certain way for certain interests. And campaign finance is something we could spend a whole political conversation on if we wanted to.
yes, because I don't understand how people can stay in office and they become millionaires.
That's
Okay.
pretty
I,
crazy.
yeah, that is pretty crazy. Um, it's just that we just really need, when it comes to our elected officials, we really need to take our time, caution them, and attend meetings. And if they want to have one at 10 o'clock in the morning, we should write a letter and say that's not convenient for most of the people that elected you.
That's right.
Okay, could you have one at 7 o'clock? Oh, I want to have a Zoom meeting. We should let
Yeah.
them know. Call their office and say, that Zoom meet, I don't know how to do Zoom. I'm not computer savvy. So could you have a meeting and we can sit 6 feet apart or whatever like that. But I think it's the elected officials' responsibility to give information back to the community. Representative Scott, when Frankfurt's in session on Fridays, she has a summary of what has happened in Frankfurt for the week.
Nice.
Yes.
That's awesome. So, Miss Jackie, this has been an amazing conversation.
Yes.
And I am excited to invite people to join us for the next political conversation that you host.
Yes.
But in the meantime, I want to shout out some other opportunities for folks to
Yes.
stay in touch with Russell, a Place of Promise. So, for those of you who missed it, last week was Impact Week, and we were so excited to celebrate the Russell neighborhood and the residents and all the individuals and businesses and organizations that we've worked with over the past 2.5 years. And in case you missed it, you can go to our resident landing page and you can download a copy of an impact report that we put together that outlines all the things that have happened over the last 2.5 years with Russell, a Place of Promise. And you can also go on that site and you can request a hard copy because we know that PDFs, downloads, they don't work for everybody. So we will have a limited number of hard copies to share with folks. And then I don't know if you want to talk about bread and butter.
The Bread and Butter series, it will come out. It will be on next Thursday. Christian Butler is doing a wonderful job. She has some interesting topics on there, especially about health, wealth, and that's really good. I encourage everybody to tune in. I also want to let our residents know that we have started our canvassing, and for the month of April, we will be out from 3 to 5 in the Russell community. So if you see us with our orange shirts on saying Russell Place of Promise, please stop us and say hello and find out what's going, what we're up to, because we do want we want to meet you, we want to talk with you, and we want to find out what's going on in your neighborhood.
Absolutely. Well, with that and with all the good things that are going on, I think it's time for us to say goodnight.
Yes. I just want to
Thank
say
you.
thank you for joining in tonight, and please forgive us for our little computer tech problems. I'm still in the baby stage of learning, but I am learning. So everyone have a good night, and we'll talk to you next month.
Good night,
Bye bye.
everybody.
Okay, before I say something, let me make sure